I'll tell you what, it's my privilege today to come and speak to this austere group of people in this room. And from what I understand, there's people all over the country, all over the world that is joining us. And my name is Bob Surton. I own an investigation firm here in Springfield, Missouri, called Robert Surton Investigations. I had to think of a long time before I gave that name to the company. I've also been involved in a lot of church safety and security issues. I taught at Evangel University here in Springfield for 24 years, and I am used to walking around the classroom. They've got me tied down to this table today with the camera, and so I'm going to try to sit still and definitely not be walking around. The topic that I've been given today is keeping the room safe, okay? What would you do, just visualize this for a minute, if some intruder busted through that door and started screaming and yelling and maybe had a weapon of some kind, or wherever you are sitting viewing this program, if somebody busted into the room all of a sudden and for the purpose of possibly doing you harm, what would you do? You might do nothing because you may not know what to do except be very fearful. And so let me make a sobering statement right now that keeping the room safe is pretty much impossible. Okay, because if somebody wants to do harm bad enough, they're going to be able to do it. Now there are some things, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. There are some things that we can do to mitigate, maybe prevent, but this is pretty tough. And I remember we had here in Springfield, we had a superintendent of schools, Norm Ritter, and he was a good guy. And I remember at a chamber event, it was shortly after we had some of the more serious school shootings, Sandy Hook and some of those other ones, that he came up gave a speech to the Springfield chamber. And he said, "Our schools are safe." I'm reading his quote. "I assure you, our schools are safe." Okay? I understand why he made that comment, but you can't guarantee that. You can't make that kind of a statement. You can't say this room is safe from all intruders, because I came in an unlocked door, I came up an unlocked elevator, and I walked down the hall, and that's just the way we do business, okay? And we have to do business that way. But for him to make the statement that our schools are safe, he doesn't really know that. Now they have taken, and what he was referring to, taken a lot of great steps to try to ensure the safety of the schools, whether it's locking the doors, cameras, maybe a security team, restrict entry. There's all kinds of things that they can do. The bottom line is, though, that if somebody really wants to do harm to you, I hate to say this, but they're probably going to be able to. But there's some things that we can do to prepare ourselves. And if you just look at the building that we're in now, or the building that our TV audience is in, it's very difficult to make a place safe. My remarks today are going to be applicable to businesses, of course, to churches, to schools, or any place where people gather. And so if I use the words church or business, I mean all those different things. Okay. I was a Springfield police officer many years ago in my previous life, and I knew, and unfortunately we've had many examples of this in the past few months. I knew that if somebody wanted to kill me, they probably could. Whether it's me in uniform at a lunch break at McDonald's, sitting there enjoying my lunch or dinner, or sitting in the car writing reports at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're pretty vulnerable. And that's how we are today. Can you only imagine? And teaching at Evangel, I taught criminal justice and was director of the program. I've got 6 students right now in the U.S. Secret Service. 3 of them are stationed in Washington, D.C. I can't tell you who they're guarding because I just can't do that. But can you imagine the security that the president and his wife and the vice president and Bear and the little boy, their little boy has around them, because they have to be kept safe. There's no other way of getting around it. It doesn't matter who's president, doesn't matter what party is in power. We have to keep those people safe. And so when I was a cop, I knew that you were very vulnerable, and you've seen, we've seen the horrible things that are happening in Chicago and Portland and New York City and other places. Thank goodness it's not happening here in Springfield yet anyway. And so keeping the room safe is pretty tough, okay? But just like police officers can do, and teachers, and pastors and pastoral staff, there are some steps that you can take to prevent, or at least deal with when it happens, to minimize the damage that may occur. You may not remember this, but probably, boy, time gets away from me. 8 or 10 years ago or so, there was a guy that went into a Jewish daycare in Los Angeles and shot several people. What they found during that, kids and staff, what they found in the investigation is that gentleman went to another daycare just before he went to the daycare where he did the damage. But the daycare he went to first had cameras in plain view, okay? So he decided he wasn't going to go there. He went someplace that did not have cameras. And so that's just an example of there's some things that we can do to maybe prevent. Now, the bad thing is he went to another daycare and did horrible things. And so that's a good example of how businesses and schools and others can maybe, I hate to use the word prevent because you can't prevent it, but in that case, that actually did. I want to look at some of the school shootings, and this information is applicable to some of the people who have gone in and did violence in churches and in businesses. Did you know that the average age for a kid that participated in a school shooting is 14 and a half years old? Most incidents are less than 10 minutes long. Sorry, I'm taking allergy medication. Sorry for drinking the water. Most of the time, multiple weapons are used. 9 out of 10 shooters are suicidal. They pretty much know they're not going to get out because they know they're going to kill themselves when they do the damage they want, because they know if they don't, the police are. Most of the time, the perpetrators are somehow mentally ill and acting in some kind of diminished capacity. You may remember the Sandy Hook shooting. They pretty much did everything right. The school did. They had a buzzer system on the front door. You couldn't get in unless you got buzzed in. They had a camera system. They had a plan. They had lockdown procedures. They had a good working relationship with the local first responders, the police and fire. I mean, this school did it right. They did. But yet a gunman was still able to go in there and kill 26 people, most of them children, because he had the type of gun that he could shoot the locks and get in the door. And so here's the situation that they were really smart. They did almost everything right, but the bad guy still got in and did some harm. And so there are several things that pastors and pastoral staff can do, teachers can do, businesses can do, anywhere where people gather. And so that's why I'm making my remarks to kind of cover all of those entities. Here's some things that you can do. A lot of times, the perpetrator may be an employee or a family member of an employee, sometimes an estranged husband of an employee. Keep your eyes and ears open. If you're in a church or you're in a business or you're in a school or whatever, keep your eyes and ears open. Listen to people when they talk. And if you hear somebody talking about, their horrible life or whatever, and you can't have just one indicator. You have to have lots. Okay, if somebody's talking about doing themselves harm, obviously that's going to be a big red flag. Be more involved. Be more involved in your parishioners, your students, your employees, whatever setting you are in. Somehow know some of the warning signs. You can't predict violence. Because some of the people who have perpetrated violence, you've seen the interviews on television from the next door neighbor, the guy that killed 10 people. Boy, he was a nice guy. I mean, we got along well, and he was just a normal guy. And you see that a lot. And then he goes out and kills 10 people. And so it's hard to predict, but there are some, especially with kids, there are some things, whether somebody is depressed, and of course everybody is depressed at some point in time about something, so you can't just have that. But there are some warning signs that you can maybe even detect some of the problems, such as people who may be withdrawn, or their personality withdrawn, or that may just be their personality. Okay, may not mean anything. Maybe people who are antisocial. That may mean they're just a mean person. But it could mean they've got something going on inside their head. Somebody that may have abnormal anger issues. Any signs of aggression or aggressive behavior. And again, one of these isolated really doesn't mean anything. But it is a red flag. It's something that you may say to yourself, I need to pay attention to this person just a little bit more. Maybe they seem depressed. Well, that could be because they had an argument with their wife or their husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or kids or whatever. And but if they have a track record of being seeming to be in a depressed mood, that may indicate something else. Maybe they have a propensity to participate in violent things. There has been a lot of discussion over the last couple of decades about video games. Some of the video games you probably know are horrendous. And I tend to think, and this is a fairly educated opinion, but it's still just my opinion, that I think some video games, especially the video games where it puts the player in the position of killing people, can cause somebody to become violent. Now, we cannot say video games cause violence. We can't say that because there's millions of people who play those video games who never become violent. And so, but is it a contributor? Well, I think it is sometimes. And if you look at some of the school shooters, especially the kids' school shooters, they've had that. They were in that kind of culture, that kind of violent culture. And does it cause criminal behavior? Does it cause violent behavior? No. Can it contribute? I think maybe it does. There's also a lot of things that the school, the business, the church can do. One is to limit and control access. The issue with churches, though, is that churches want to be welcoming to people. They want people to come in any door of the church. They want people to come. They especially want people to come who have the need to have an intervention by Almighty God, okay, that need prayer or need a sermon or whatever. And so churches are very, very vulnerable. And I'm very happy at the fact that churches they are wising up a little bit, and they do have some of the things that I propose in a book that I published a few years ago. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And whether it's security or whether it's video cameras or whatever the case may be, but churches are limiting access and controlling access to the building, but you can't do that because you don't want somebody to come to church and reach for a locked door, okay? But businesses, schools, other entities, of course, you can do that. Regardless of whether you're a church or a business or a school or whatever, you need to have a crisis plan in place. You need to have some kind of preparation, because if somebody comes into your building or your room with the intent of doing harm, you need to have a plan. that should not be the first time you've thought about this, okay? And the plan needs to be in writing. Visitor screening and processing. Schools are doing this. Can churches do this? No. But you can put ushers on the door and train the ushers to be very aware of people when they shake, or we don't shake hands anymore with the virus present, but have the ushers look people in the eye, and maybe they might detect somebody who just has that look that just is not good. And they need to report that to their security team or whatever. Staff training. If you have a business, you train your staff. That what do you do if somebody comes in? My office is located at 3333 East Battlefield here in Springfield, and there's been a guy come 3 times to our parking lot and just walk around. And I notice that because I'm an investigator type guy and I pay attention to those kind of things. But and I went in the parking lot and watched him. He just walked around the parking lot for no reason. I went over to him about 20 feet away and I said, "Sir, can I help you?" And I took a picture of him with my phone. He didn't say a word. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask me why I'm taking a picture of him. I've still got the picture. This happened last week. So anyway, I didn't think much about it, but I emailed or texted my staff. I've got 4 investigators, and I said, "Here's a picture of some guy that's look a little strange." So anyway, he comes back a few days later, and comes in and takes a business card. I wasn't there; my wife was there. Takes a business card of each of my investigators, turns around, walks out, doesn't say a word. Okay. So I notified my staff about that. And we have a front door and a back door, so we've got a pretty good way to get out of that building if we need to. And so yesterday he comes back. And I'm in the office, my wife's at the front desk, and he says, "I want to have a conversation with Bob," and takes one of my business cards off the desk. And so she says, "Well, he's here right now." And he turned around and left. And so I go out and follow him, and I jump in my car and follow him for about, he walked down Ingram Mill. So anyway, there's a guy that we need to pay attention to. If I would not tell my staff about that, that would be a horrible thing for me to do if that guy comes back. And so we're taking some measures of trying to make our place secure and my people secure, my staff secure. But I'm like at church. I want people to be able to walk in the front door if they want to. But that may not happen here in the near future. And so, and then have some kind of going back to the list of things you can do, have some kind of reporting and tracking system for people's behavior. You know, a school counselor may pick up on something, and they need to put that in the computer, say this student came in, or in a business, this employee came in, if you're an HR person, and seemed to be distraught, and we need to see if we can help this person and definitely watch this person, okay? And Mr. Director and Camry, you're going to tell me when I'm about out of time, or how does that
yeah, I will. I'll let you know when you have 10 minutes left.
Okay, that'll be great. 'Cause I know you're on a fairly strict time schedule.
Yeah, we're a little behind today, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, you just tell me, like I say, 10 minutes, and I'll start wrapping things up and maybe take some questions. So, what do you do when somebody does come in and they may not have a gun or a knife, but they may be obviously mentally ill or obviously intoxicated, or maybe they have a gun, or they say they have a gun or a knife. You don't see it, but they claim that. So you become aware somehow in your business or wherever that there may be somebody who wants to do something bad and maybe injure somebody. What do you do? Well, the first thing you do is dial 911. Now, a lot of people think that 911 is strictly for emergencies. Now, my friends who work over here in the 911 office for Springfield and Greene County want to be careful because it is for emergencies. But if you've got somebody who's a suspicious person in your neighborhood, they want you, that's not an emergency yet, but they want you to dial 911. Who else are you going to call at 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? And so you can call 911 and say, you know, we've got this guy that is looking pretty strange, that we'd like to have him checked out, okay? And they'll come do that. I didn't do that on this guy I referenced here a few minutes ago because I'm checking him out. And the state of Missouri does have a carry concealed law, and I use that. So I do carry a weapon and license to do so, and so I'm equipped to be able to handle that situation. But if you're not, you can dial 911 and just tell them what you've got. And that's a tough thing to do because nobody wants to overreact, okay? And especially at a church. You don't want the cops busting in the front doors, and so anyway, you're going to explain to them, whether you're a business or school or whatever, what you have, and they'll act accordingly. Now, if it's just a hunch or a suspicion or whatever, you may not want to dial 911, but if you've got some kind of evidence, if you see a gun in the waistband or this person is getting aggressive with people in the building, you probably need to go ahead and do that. And of course, every situation is different. And so some people would like for me to go, okay, give me a list of things we need to do. Well, I can do that, but not everything on that list is going to be applicable to every situation, okay? And so to give a nice formula or a nice recipe to deal with a situation, you need a formula and a recipe, a different one maybe to deal with every situation, okay? First of all, let's say that somebody does come in the church and it's an obvious situation. It's not a hunch. It's not a suspicion. He displays a weapon, a knife or a gun, or he's obviously screaming at people or assaulting people. I'm talking about something that's obvious. Other than calling 911, if you can flee, if you can get out, get out. Don't try to be a hero. Because if he has a weapon and you don't, that's not a good combination. And so if you can get out, and help other people get out, of course. If you are in an office building or a school or a church or whatever, and you can't flee, you get in a room with a lock on it, you lock the door, and then call 911 and tell them where you're at and what's going on. Turn the lights off in the room. Let's say that this door, we hear gunfire, okay? If I hear gunfire, I'm going out in the hallway, but you're not, okay? I'm going to find out what's going on. But if this room has a lock, lock it. Turn the lights off. Come around here and hide, okay? You want to minimize the possibility. Can he get in that door if it has a lock? Sure he can. But if he goes like this and it's locked, he's just going to go somewhere else. And I use the word he because have you ever seen a female person assault students in a school or at the post office? We've had a lot of in the past years, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, dangerous people go into a post office. Usually they're a disgruntled employee or ex-employee. Have you ever seen that be a female? Well, I haven't. It's all been males, okay? And so stay put if you have to, flee if you can. In an active shooter situation, you have choices. One choice is that you never give up. And I'm going to talk about a really nice video that it's only about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes that I can't show here, but I want you to look at it at some point in time. I'm going to reference here in a few minutes. Let's say that you are in the building and you want to assess the sounds. If there is gunfire, is it getting louder or is it getting more faint? Well, that's going to tell you if he's coming at you or going away from you. If he's going away from you, that's obviously a good thing. If the perpetrator's coming at you, you need to make sure that you've done all the things that you can do. Freezing is not an option, okay? Doing nothing is not an option. This little video I'm gonna tell you about here in a few minutes talks about that, okay? Take cover. There's a difference between cover and concealment. Concealment is you're hiding behind that curtain that I'm looking at in front of me that our TV audience can't see. That's concealment. Is that curtain going to stop a bullet? No. But cover will. Cover might be a brick wall or a solid core door possibly, something like that. And so if you can put yourself in that situation, that's even better. If you're left without cover, you're pretty vulnerable. but try to move to a place of concealment. Because if you can't see you, that's not cover, but it's next best thing. Maybe if you're outside and the perpetrator's outside, maybe some hedges or trees. If you're inside a business or a church or school, maybe there's a clothes rack you can hide behind with clothes. A drywall wall is not going to stop a bullet, but it'll keep somebody from seeing you. Somehow, you have to try to exit the kill zone. Now, I have given a presentation, not this presentation, but similar, to college seniors who are about to graduate, and they are education majors. And these are idealistic, 22-year-old, wonderful kids who, guys and girls, men and women, who are going to be, they're doing their student teaching, and they're going to be teaching hopefully that following fall. And they, like I said, they're idealistic. They want to help kids. They want to teach kids, all the right motives. And here I am talking to them about a kill zone, all right? And so I explained to them, I'll bet you when you signed up for your education in being a teacher, you never thought somebody was going to talk to you about the kill zone or concealment or cover or whatever. And I said, unfortunately, our culture has come to this, that we have to talk about it. And what I do for them that I couldn't do for you, I had some of my students dress up in all black, wearing masks, ski mask. And when I start talking at the very beginning of the session, they bust in and screaming and yelling. They didn't have any weapons or anything. I wouldn't do that. But before they bust in, I put on the PowerPoint display, role play now. And so they have like 3 seconds to know we're going to do a role play. And so that gives them a little bit of warning. But these guys, they bust in and basically screaming and yelling and you know, like I say, they're not waving weapons or anything like that. But I wanted to give them the sense of intruders coming into their classroom because they're teachers. And then I make the statement, and that lasts like 10 seconds. Okay, that's all I want. I just want their heart pounding really hard just for about 10 seconds, and I get that done. And I make the point then, if this was your classroom teacher, you're the only teacher in the room, you've got 20 to 30 kids that you're responsible for, what are you going to do? And it's a very sobering thought. And so for about an hour, I have them and I talk to them about some of the things they need to think about. I have some presentations that takes a half a day and an all day to do some of the things I'm talking to you about. I only have 45 minutes today, and so I'm kind of going over the highlights, of course. But somehow get out of the kill zone if you can't do that. And if you're in a safe place, don't move, okay? If you're in a safe place like this room, lights off, door locked, stay here, okay? If you're pinned down somewhere, you might wait for a lull in the gunfire. And that's another thing my high school, college seniors who are going to be teachers, if you hear a lull in the gunfire, that might be a time to go flee or something. Well, they never thought they'd hear that either. One thing you want to pay attention to or remember is that when this active shooter or active mentally ill person or active intoxicated person or estranged husband who is looking to do harm to his wife and he knows she's here or at work or at church and this situation begins, you need to know you're pretty much on your own, okay? You're pretty much on your own. Somebody has dialed 911, the troops are coming, the cops are coming, but they are here for the bad guy. They're not here for you. They're here to stop the bad guy, okay? I remember, does anybody remember the first school shooting? Columbine, you're right. Colorado, Columbine. It took the cops about 40 minutes to enter the building. It was not their fault, okay? They relied on their training. Back then, training was, if you have an active shooter like that, you get all the cops there and you wait outside the building. And can you imagine a huge high school like that, how many doors they had, okay? And so they waited till this door was covered by cops and that one, it took them about 40 minutes. I think somebody told me 41 minutes, okay? Everything was over by then, okay? And so then they entered the building and all they did was saw the aftermath. Right after that, I was still doing police work part-time back then, police department said, you know, that's not gonna work anymore. And so now, the training is that if you have an active shooter, the first cop there, you go in, okay? And you listen, and you've got your gun drawn or a shotgun or whatever, and you listen and you go straight to the sounds of the gunfire or the noise the bad guy's making, and you take him out. That sounds very sobering, but that's what they do. It's great if they have 2 officers go in, but you don't wait, okay? And so,
Eliminating the threat.
pardon me? Eliminate the threat. It's great to be able to have a lot of backup and a lot of people, but that's not the training anymore. You go and eliminate the threat as fast as you can, and that's what the police do now. But you are gonna be on your own, and so you have to take some of these steps. Talking about this room or a classroom or a conference room in a business, if the door doesn't lock, start moving heavy things in front of the door, okay, as much as you can that you have time for. Place a backstop underneath the door, something that you can find in an office or a school or whatever. That could be a folded up magazine or a folded up newspaper that you put under the door to keep them from coming in. We're at the 10 minutes?
No.
Oh, okay. You gave me this dirty look. I wasn't sure. Okay. and he
can't see my face.
and he has a mask on, so I don't know if it's dirty or not, but his eyes are very friendly. I can tell you that. But as a last resort, and this is if the perpetrator breaches the door, he gets in. You've done everything right. You've locked it maybe, or if it doesn't have a lock, you put something under the door, you've moved, it looks like a refrigerator over there in the corner, you move the refrigerator, heavy desks, whatever you have, and you've done everything that you can, and he breaches the door, what are you gonna do? You've not been trained. These college seniors, most of them haven't been trained in hand-to-hand combat. They don't know martial arts. They're probably not going to have a gun, although I am an advocate for some teachers to be armed in our schools if they want to and they have the proper weapon and they have the proper training. Those are the keys, okay? Proper training and an approved weapon. I advocate for that, but most schools are not allowing that. So you're not going to have a weapon and you've not been trained to take somebody down, especially if they do have a gun, but come up with something, a pair of scissors. And here I am telling you and all these people watching us on television, I want you to find a pair of scissors and stab this guy, okay? I realize that is not something that anybody wants to do. But right now, if he's breached the door, it's him or it's you. And you've got to make that decision. You've got to make that decision. You may not have a pair of scissors, but you may have a coat rack. You may have a fire extinguisher that you can hit him in the head with. The thing of it is, if you're by yourself or if you have a bunch of people, you need to have an onslaught of assault. And you may not stop him, but you may get him to turn around and leave, okay? Because he didn't bargain for you to do that. He thought you would cave and give in and he would do you harm, okay? So as a last resort, and you don't want to go run down the hallway and confront him. The last resort is if you're just caught, if you're just stuck. You have to have this mentality that I am not going to give up. There's got to be something, and I look around this room, there's all kinds of things, even in this room, that you can use as a weapon, okay? but you don't want to go looking for an active shooter. You flee, stay put, or whatever the case may be. But you have to be prepared mainly in your mind and to be able to attack the perpetrator if he's there to attack you. Now, I have this horrible habit because I've been in this business for almost 30 years, is that when I am sitting in church, for example, sometimes I'll say to myself, okay, if a bad guy comes through that door, what am I going to do? Okay, or the bad guy comes that door, or maybe the bad guy is singing in the choir right now, and he's getting ready to do something to his estranged wife, and nobody knows that. What am I going to do? And you prepare yourself for these kinds of situations. The problem is no situation is the same. If you're at work, if a bad guy comes into the building, you have a way out. Do you have a plan in your mind of what you're going to do? And so start thinking about these things. And that's probably my main message today is, first of all, it can happen in your business. It can happen in your church. It can happen in your kid's school. It can happen in your college. Will it happen? Who knows? But it can and does, as we know. And so the message today is I'm telling you some kind of practical things, but the main thing is think about this. Be aware. Don't be naive. I've talked to a lot of people, mainly pastors of churches, that say, well, we're a small church. This is not going to happen here. That's where it usually happens, because the bad guys know the big churches, they've got cameras and security teams and they've got things in place. Conceal and carry. I did a half-a-day presentation to a church, for a church in Neosho, a couple years ago, and they wanted me to do something on active shooter, and so I was still with Evangel, so I had them come there, and we used a classroom, and somebody asked me a question: should we carry guns? And I said, if you have a obviously mainstream weapon, you don't want some Saturday night special or something you bought off the internet for $29.99, but a real gun, okay? And if you've had adequate training. In Missouri, you have to have if you want the license, you have to go through a CCW class. They don't teach you how to shoot, okay? They teach you how not to shoot and when not to shoot for the most part, all right? But you have to, so that's not enough training, but you have to be trained to know what situations you can use violent force. Basically, if you think you're in imminent, immediate danger, you can use deadly force, okay? It doesn't mean that guy has to have a gun. It means he can have a baseball bat. It means he can have a knife or whatever. And if that guy is within 21 feet of you, he can probably stab you before you get your gun out of the holster or out of your pocket or wherever. And so, so in any event, I was talking to this group from the church in Neosho, and there's probably 20 people in the room. And I said, does anybody carry a gun in your church? And their congregation is probably 80 or 90 people on Sunday morning, because I asked them that at the beginning. And they said, yeah, we have 21 people in our congregation who carry guns to church every Sunday. Now, he didn't say about 20 or about maybe almost 25. He said 21, okay? And so they knew exactly. And I said, well, I hope that you are all very well trained. And they said, yes, we are. So anybody, I won't name the church, if anybody goes in that church in Neosho to do any harm, they've got another thought coming to them. Because this, along with their preparation and the information I gave them, they are highly suited to be able to defend themselves. And of course, you may remember a couple years ago where this gentleman came into a church and sat on the back row and just started shooting on a Wednesday night. It was a youth group meeting on a Wednesday night. And can you stop that? No. But you have a plan and you've thought about it. And I think there was somebody there that had a plan, and they were able to minimize the damage because of that. Okay, let me, Mr. Director has told me I need to start wrapping up here in a few minutes, and so I want to do that. And I don't know if you have any questions for me. Sometimes my question may be, I don't know, but I'll get that answer for you. Let me check my notes just to make sure I got everything. Okay, what questions would you have?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We both had the same question. He wrote it down. I said, that's what I was going to ask.
It must be a tough one.
The couple in St. Louis who were registered, they had their guns, they felt that they were in imminent danger, and here they're maybe being indicted. What's that situation? Kind of goes against what they do.
And do we need to get a gun for our house?
The answer to that question is yes.
Always.
Unless you don't like guns. If you don't like these kids are going to be teachers. If they're afraid of guns, they've never been exposed to guns, no, don't get a gun. I mean, don't do that. Hopefully there's more teachers who will do that, but I would never advocate anybody getting a gun unless you're willing to do the training and because you have to know when to shoot. Mainly you got to know when not to shoot, okay?
How it shoots.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but if you don't like guns, I wouldn't buy one. Now let me go to your question. A couple in St. Louis.
Okay, they were in imminent danger, they felt, when the protesters broke through their gate and they had their registered gun.
Yeah.
So is that the law or not?
That's a political situation in St. Louis. And I'll comment on that a little bit. But and they are probably going to be indicted. They should not be indicted. Okay. End of story. Now the imminent danger is you have to make sure you have that, okay? Now, if they broke in the gates, that's a pretty good furtive step, okay? Now, but they were not in imminent danger yet. And I assume if they would have been in imminent danger, immediate danger, they would have shot somebody, but they didn't, because even they, I think he's an attorney or something, so you ought to know. And so they were not in imminent danger yet. Let's say that one of the protesters pulled out a gun or a knife, then you are perfectly okay to take whatever action. But you have to have the training to make sure, because you don't want to shoot into a crowd,
No.
okay? Now let's say that you're sitting here and you say, Bob, I am going to kill you. And I'm going to do it before this session is over with, okay? Do you have the means to do that? I'm looking around. I don't see a gun or a knife. So even though you said you're going to kill me, and you've got this look on your face like you're going to, and I don't know you may be doing that. Am I in imminent danger? The answer is no, because words cannot hurt me and kill me. Now, if you say, Bob, I'm going to kill you, okay, that's imminent danger. All right, and that's when they could have, if they wanted to, defend their life by shooting. I was a little uncomfortable about the wife. She had this handgun. She's kind of waving around, and she should have put that in her pocket. And
Walking in front of the line of fire.
Yeah,
behind him.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
you have to have muzzle awareness.
That's where the training comes in.
That's where the training comes in. She was not trained.
Danced on the crowd, he was looking off somewhere else
Yeah.
instead of covering her.
Yeah. It was not a good situation, but they did nothing illegal. They're on their own property. And so it's good they did not shoot because they were not in imminent danger.
What if they charge, though? Where do you draw the line?
If you, and see, even if you feel like you're in imminent danger, and that's like the police officer who stops somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the guy comes out like this, and the police officer shoots him, the police officer says, I really thought he had a gun. It turned out to be his wallet, okay? I thought he had a gun. I thought I was in imminent danger. And if the police, and they can't make it up. They have to be telling the truth, of course. That shooting is probably going to be justified. Because was he in imminent danger? No. Did he think he was based on the actions of the perpetrator? Yes. But boy, that's a fine line, and I would never want to be in that position. But, and now we have police officers who are hesitant because of all the stupid stuff going on around the country.
I know.
They're hesitant to to protect themselves, and it's not about protecting themselves, it's about protecting the lives of others. But why would the prosecutor in St. Louis or St. Louis County want to indict the people who are standing there holding a gun, protecting their property, and not indict the people who broke in the fence or tearing down statues or doing all this other illegal behavior? Illegal behavior. I don't know. That's where it comes in politically. You know, we've got 3 minutes. I want to mention one more thing, and we'll probably take another question or two. The video that I referenced is called Run, Hide, or Fight. Okay? You can Google that. I think the governor of Alabama does a little introduction to that. Run, Hide, Fight. It's about a 5 or 6 minute video. It is worth seeing. It really is, and that will kind of bring the things that I've talked about kind of into summary and into conclusion. And pardon me?
Is that on YouTube?
It's on YouTube. There'll probably be several different places on YouTube that has that.
Run, hide, fight.
Run, hide, fight. And it's very practical. That's the last thing I show the group that I do the presentation for, who are going to be teachers. And there's no blood and guts or anything like it. It's very practical. You can show it to anybody, and it's worth looking at that, because, like I say, that does kind of bring into conclusion the remarks I made today. Okay, we've got maybe a minute and a half or so, and does anybody have another question that I could answer?
2 minutes exactly.
2 minutes exactly. I could sing and dance, but you would not want to be exposed to that.
No, that'd be awesome.
Pardon me?
That would be awesome, sing and dance.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to see that, especially the dancing part.
School security, should they have guys, security with armaments?
Absolutely. And around here, they do. School security here in Springfield, Missouri, takes two forms. Some of them will have regular police officers who they detach from the police department, and they're school security. We also have our own school security, who those guys also carry guns. They work for the school system, and so we have a combination of both. But absolutely, for two reasons. One, it might even have a deterrent effect.
Absolutely.
That if the students or their parents, whoever knows that there's at least one person in that building that has a gun and knows how to use it, that may be a deterrent. The other reason is obvious, and that is they could take care of any threat that arises. I even advocate school teachers, like I said before, if they want to. But that does open kind of a Pandora's box in a way. But it can be done if the training is correct. Yes, sir.
I can't remember what it was I was going to say now, but yeah, I think that if they posted a sign saying our teachers carry concealed, that would definitely be a deterrent. Signage would be a deterrent.
It would be.
The signs that say no guns allowed are just an invitation.
Yeah, that's an invitation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I ignore all those signs. Do they? Yeah, that's good. And they don't know which teacher's carrying.
Right.
So it could be anybody.
And we are out of time.
Out of time. Thank you guys and ladies for allowing me to come today. I hope it was beneficial to you. Thank you so much.